The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They dreamed of distant worlds and alien life. In the year 2347, those dreams finally became real. Humans built ships that could travel faster than light. They founded their first colony on a planet called New Hope, 20 light years from Earth. It was supposed to be the greatest achievement in human history. People celebrated in the streets of every city. Scientists wept with joy. Children pointed at the stars and knew that one day they might walk on worlds their grandparents could only imagine. The celebration lasted exactly 3 weeks. On a cold morning in February, the sky above New Geneva grew dark. At first, people thought it was a storm. Then they looked up and saw the ships. Thousands of them. Each one was larger than any building on Earth. They blocked out the sun and cast shadows across entire continents. The ships did not attack. They simply waited, hanging in the sky like a promise of death. Then came the message. Every screen on Earth, every radio, every device that could receive a signal displayed the same thing. A face appeared. It was not human. The creature had the body of an insect, with hard black shell covering its skin. Its eyes were large and empty, like pools of dark water. When it spoke, its voice was cold and without feeling. I am Ambassador Zethral of the Korvathi Dominion. I speak for the Galactic Hegemony Council. You are the species called humans. You have been found. You have been judged. You will now receive your terms. Across the world, people stopped what they were doing. They gathered around screens in homes, offices, and public squares. Fear spread like a disease. Parents held their children close. Soldiers gripped their weapons and knew those weapons were useless. The ambassador continued. For 10,000 years, the Council has ruled this galaxy. When new species are discovered, they are given a choice. They may join the hegemony as tribute species. They will provide resources, technology, and workers. In return, they will be allowed to exist. This is the law. This is the only law. Zethral paused. His empty eyes seemed to stare into the soul of every human watching. You have 30 of your solar cycles to comply. You will deliver 60% of your planet's rare minerals. You will provide 10 million of your people as labor workers. You will surrender all rights to expand beyond your home system. These terms are not negotiable. Species who refuse are removed. We have removed 17 species. Their worlds are now empty. Their names are forgotten. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. For 3 days, Earth was paralyzed by fear. Governments held emergency meetings. Military leaders studied the alien fleet and came to a terrible conclusion. The ships above Earth could destroy the entire planet in hours. Humanity's weapons were like toys compared to the technology of the Council. Some leaders wanted to surrender immediately. They argued that survival was more important than pride. 10 million workers was a terrible price, but it was better than extinction. Others wanted to fight, even knowing they would lose. They said death was better than slavery. The United Earth Assembly gathered in New Geneva to make the final decision. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in the great circular hall. The galleries were filled with ordinary citizens who had come to witness history. The world watched and waited. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stood at the central podium. She was 63 years old, with gray hair and dark skin lined by years of service. She had led Earth through the transition to a unified government. She had championed the space program that reached the stars. Now she faced the hardest moment of her life. We have received the Council's demand, she said. Her voice was calm but heavy with emotion. We have studied them. We have debated them. Now we must decide. Will we submit to this hegemony? Will we give them our resources, our people, our future? Will we become slaves to masters who see us as nothing more than tools? She looked around the hall. She saw fear in many eyes, but she also saw something else. She saw anger. She saw defiance. I have read our history, Amara continued. I have read about the times when humans faced impossible odds, when small groups stood against mighty empires, when people chose death over chains. I have read about the warriors who defended their homes against invaders who had every advantage. Do you know what those stories teach us? She paused. The hall was completely silent. They teach us that the human spirit cannot be measured by the size of our weapons. It cannot be weighed against the number of our enemies. It is something more. It is the fire that burns in every person who has ever looked at a tyrant and said no. Amara's voice rose. I did not lead humanity to the stars so we could kneel before the first bully we encountered. I did not work my entire life for this species so we could hand our children over as slaves. They want us to be afraid. They want us to believe we have no choice, but we always have a choice. She raised her hand and pointed toward the ceiling, toward the ships that waited above. Let them come with their fleets. Let them come with their weapons and their threats. Let them learn what happens when they try to chain a species that has spent its entire existence fighting for freedom. We did not survive ice ages, plagues, and world wars to surrender to alien masters. We did not split the atom and touch the stars to become someone's property. Her final words rang through the hall like thunder. I say we fight. I say we show this council that humanity will never bow. I say we tell them, in one voice that echoes across the galaxy, we will never surrender. The hall exploded. Representatives rose to their feet, cheering and shouting. The citizens in the galleries wept and embraced. Around the world, people watching on screens felt something change inside them. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something stronger. The vote was called. Every single representative voted the same way. Humanity chose defiance. Ambassador Zethral received the response on his ship. A human diplomat delivered the message in person, standing straight and unafraid before the alien creature. The people of Earth reject your terms, the diplomat said. We will not pay tribute. We will not surrender our people. We will not kneel. If you want our world, and you will have to take it, and we will make you pay for every inch in blood. Zethral studied the small human for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. You are fool, he said. You have chosen extinction. The diplomat smiled. Maybe, but we have also chosen to remain human. That is worth more than survival. Across the galaxy, news of humanity's refusal spread like fire. Species who had served the Council for thousands of years heard the story and felt something they had almost forgotten. They felt hope, and in the dark spaces between stars, ancient eyes turned toward Earth and watched with growing interest. Something new was happening, something that had not happened in 10,000 years. Someone had finally said no. The news of humanity's defiance spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size heard the story. Most of them shook their heads in disbelief. The humans were brave, they said. Brave and stupid. The Council had never lost. The Council would crush these newcomers like insects, and soon the name human would be added to the list of forgotten species. But on some worlds, the reaction was different. On Valor Prime, an ancient planet circling a dying star, the elders gathered in their sacred halls. The Valori were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been among the first to be conquered by the Council over 8,000 years ago. Once they had been warriors. Now they were servants, their spirit broken by centuries of oppression. Elder Serathvin was over 3,000 years old. He had watched countless species rise against the Council. He had watched all of them fall, but something about the humans was different. He could feel it in his bones. They will not win, said one of the younger elders. No one ever wins. Serathvin closed his 4 eyes and thought of his ancestors. He thought of the great warriors who had once defended Valor Prime. He thought of their courage and their failure. Perhaps, he said slowly, but perhaps the time has come to stop waiting for someone else to win. Perhaps the time has come to join the fight. On Earth, there was no time for philosophy. The clock was ticking. 30 cycles. 30 days to prepare for the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin was named Supreme Commander of Earth's defense. She was 60 years old, small in body but sharp in mind. She had spent her entire career studying military history, from ancient battles fought with swords to modern conflicts fought with nuclear weapons. Now she faced a challenge unlike anything in human experience. Tell me what we have, she said to her staff on the first day. The answer was not encouraging. Earth had a fleet of about 300 ships. Most of them were small patrol vessels designed for peaceful exploration. The Council fleet numbered over 50,000 warships, each one carrying weapons that could crack a planet in half. We cannot win a direct battle, Admiral Chen said. So we will not fight a direct battle. We will fight the way humans have always fought when facing superior enemies. We will be shadows in the night. We will strike from places they do not expect. We will make them bleed for every step they take. Across Earth, the mobilization began. Factories that had made consumer products now made weapons. Scientists who had studied distant stars now studied council technology. Miners who had dug for precious metals now dug defensive tunnels deep beneath the Earth's surface. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was a 35-year-old physicist who had spent her career studying quantum mechanics. When the crisis began, she was pulled from her university and brought to a secret military facility. Her mission: find a weakness in the Council's technology. For 2 weeks, Yuki studied captured Council devices. She worked without sleep, living on coffee and determination. The technology was beyond anything human science had achieved. But technology was still technology. It followed rules, and rules could be broken. On the 18th day, Yuki found it. The Council ships all use the same navigation system, she told Admiral Chen. Every ship is connected to a central beacon. It helps them coordinate their movements perfectly. Without it, they would be blind. Admiral Chen leaned forward. Can we disable it? Yuki smiled. It was the smile of a scientist who had solved an impossible puzzle. I can build a device that will disrupt the signal. Their ships will not be able to communicate. Their formations will collapse. For a few hours, they will be chaos. Build it, Admiral Chen said. Build it fast. While the military prepared for war, Secretary General Amara Okonkwo worked on a different kind of battle. She knew that humans could not defeat the Council alone. They needed allies. But who would stand with them against an enemy that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years? In secret, she reached out to the Vailori. The communication was dangerous. If the Council discovered it, both species would be punished severely. But Amara understood something important. The Council's power was based on fear. If that fear could be broken, if other species saw that resistance was possible, everything could change. Elder Sarathvin received her message on an encrypted channel that had not been used in centuries. He read her words carefully. We know we may not survive this fight, Amara had written, but we believe that freedom is worth dying for. If you share this belief, we ask you to stand with us. Not because we can promise victory, but because some things are more important than survival. For 3 days, Sarathvin considered her request. He thought about all the Valori who had suffered under Council rule. He thought about the generations yet to come who would continue to suffer unless someone found the courage to resist. He sent his reply. We have hidden ships for 3,000 years, waiting for a moment that we believed would never come. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps you are the moment we have been waiting for. When the time is right, we will come. The 30 days passed quickly, too quickly. Across Earth, people said goodbye to their families, not knowing if they would see them again. Soldiers kissed their children and promised to come home. Scientists made final adjustments to weapons that might not work. Ordinary citizens volunteered for dangerous missions that would almost certainly kill them. On the final night, Admiral Chen addressed her forces. The broadcast reached every ship, every base, every soldier waiting in the darkness of space. Tomorrow the Council fleet will arrive, she said. They have conquered hundreds of worlds. They have destroyed species who were older and stronger than us. By every measure that matters, we should lose. She paused and let her words sink in. But there is one thing they do not understand. They have never fought humans. They do not know what we are capable of when our backs are against the wall. They have conquered species who accepted defeat before the first shot was fired. They have never faced a people who would rather die standing than live on their knees. Her voice grew stronger. I will not lie to you. Many of us will die tomorrow. Perhaps all of us. But if we fall, we will fall fighting. We will show the galaxy that there is still courage in the universe. We will light a fire that the Council cannot put out. We will prove that even the smallest species can shake the foundations of tyranny. She raised her fist. For Earth, for humanity, for every being in this galaxy who has ever dreamed of freedom, tonight we rest, tomorrow we fight, and whatever happens, we will never surrender. Across the solar system, soldiers raised their fists in response. On Earth, civilians watching the broadcast did the same. The fear was still there, but it was no longer alone. Tomorrow the storm would come, but humanity was ready to meet it. And somewhere in the distant stars, the Valori fleet powered up engines that had been silent for 3,000 years. They would not let humanity fight alone. The galaxy held its breath. The Council fleet arrived with the rising sun. Over 50,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their shadows falling across the solar system like the fingers of death. At the center of the fleet was the flagship of Praetor Vorinth, a warship so massive it could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. Praetor Vorinth was the greatest military commander in Council history. He had personally overseen the destruction of 6 species. He had never lost a battle. He expected this campaign to be quick and simple, a minor task before his afternoon meal. He was wrong. The first sign of trouble came within minutes of arrival. Council scouts moved toward Mars to secure the outer colonies. They expected no resistance. Instead, they found chaos. Human fighters burst from hidden bases inside asteroids. They were small, fast, and completely unpredictable. Instead of flying in formation like every other species in the galaxy, they scattered in all directions, attacking from angles that made no tactical sense. Council gunners could not track them. By the time they locked onto one target, 3 more were already firing. "What are they doing?" asked Vorinth's second-in-command, watching the battle unfold on the tactical display. "Their movements have no pattern, no strategy." Vorinth studied the screen. The human fighters were weaving through his fleet like insects, stinging and disappearing before his ships could respond. It was inefficient. It was chaotic. It was working. "They are not fighting the way we fight," Vorinth said slowly. "They are fighting like prey that has decided to become predator. Adapt our tactics." But adapting was not easy. The Council had perfected their military strategy over 10,000 years. Every captain, every pilot, every soldier knew exactly what to do in every situation. The problem was that the humans were not following the rules. They did things that no rational species would do. A civilian transport ship flew directly at a Council cruiser, dodging weapons fire through sheer luck and desperation. At the last moment, the human crew ejected in escape pods. The empty ship crashed into the cruiser's engine section, crippling it. Council officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Who sacrificed ships like that? Who threw away resources so carelessly? On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the battle from her command center deep beneath the mountains. Her face showed nothing, but her mind was racing. The first phase was going better than expected. The humans were holding, but she knew it could not last. "Status on Tanaka's device?" she asked. "Ready," came the reply. "Waiting for your order." Chen studied the tactical display. The Council fleet was still in formation, but the edges were starting to fray. Human attacks had forced them to spread out, to chase threats in multiple directions. If she activated the disruption device now, the confusion would multiply. "Do it," she said. Deep in space, a small human satellite activated. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had built it with her own hands, working 20-hour days for 2 weeks. It sent out a pulse that was invisible to normal sensors, but devastating to Council technology. Across the enemy fleet, navigation systems went dark. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Council ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly lost track of each other. Formations collapsed. Ships that had been working together now flew in random directions. 2 cruisers collided and exploded. A destroyer accidentally fired on a friendly carrier. Praetor Vorinth watched his beautiful fleet fall into disorder. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before. He felt doubt. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "What have they done?" No one could answer him. Human hackers had also infiltrated the Council communication network. Messages were delayed or corrupted. Orders were lost. The greatest military force in the galaxy had been reduced to a confused mob. Admiral Chen seized the moment. She ordered a full attack. Human ships poured out of hiding places throughout the solar system. They came from the asteroid belt, from the moons of Jupiter, from bases hidden on tiny rocks that the Council had not bothered to scan. It was not a large force, but it struck with the fury of a species fighting for its existence. For 3 hours, the impossible happened. Humanity held. But the Council was not a force that could be defeated so easily. Praetor Vorinth was a brilliant commander. He reorganized his fleet through backup systems. He ordered his captains to ignore their instruments and fight by visual contact. Slowly, painfully, the council began to recover, and then the numbers became undeniable. For every council ship the humans destroyed, 10 more took its place. The human fleet was bleeding away, one brave pilot at a time. Earth's orbital defense stations fell one by one. The colonies on Mars were overwhelmed. The moon bases went silent. Admiral Chen received the reports with a steady face, but each one was a knife in her heart. She was sending her people to die, and she knew it. The only question was whether their deaths would mean anything. Praetor Vorinth broadcast his ultimatum. You have fought well, humans, better than any species in memory. But this battle is over. Surrender now and some of your people will survive. Continue to resist and your world will be turned to glass. You have 1 hour to decide. The message reached Admiral Chen. She read it once, then turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to all human forces, she said. When she spoke, her voice reached every ship and every soldier still fighting. I have received the Praetor's message. He offers us survival if we surrender. But what kind of survival? A life as slaves? A future as property? Are children raised to serve masters who see them as tools? She shook her head. I did not become a soldier to accept that kind of survival. I became a soldier to defend something worth living for. She took a breath. I will not order anyone to keep fighting. If you wish to surrender, I will not blame you. But I will not surrender. I will fight until my last breath. Because I believe that some things are worth more than life. And one of those things is the right to stand tall and free. Across the solar system, human soldiers listened to her words. Many of them were wounded. Many were in damaged ships with failing systems. All of them were exhausted and afraid, and every single one of them chose to keep fighting. Lieutenant Marcus Cole was 24 years old. His fighter had been hit 3 times and was barely holding together. His weapons were almost empty. He had no chance of survival, but his ship could still fly. He looked at the tactical display and saw Praetor Vorinth's flagship. The massive ship was directing the Council fleet, coordinating the final assault on Earth. If that ship fell, the enemy would lose their leader. It would not win the war, but it would send a message. Marcus opened his throttle and flew directly at the flagship. Council guns tried to stop him. His ship was hit again and again. Warning lights flashed across his cockpit, but Marcus kept flying. He dodged and weaved through the fire with skills he did not know he had. In his final moments, he thought of his mother and father. He thought of his little sister. He thought of the world he was fighting to protect. His ship struck the flagship's bridge at full speed. Praetor Vorinth, the greatest military commander in Council history, died in an instant. The Council fleet froze. In 10,000 years, no enemy had ever killed a Praetor. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. But the humans had done it. For a moment, just a moment, the entire galaxy held its breath. The Council had been hurt. Not badly, not permanently, but hurt in a way that everyone could see. And then from the outer edge of the solar system, new ships appeared. 60 Valori warships dropped out of hyperspace, their ancient weapons powering up for battle. Behind them came more ships, from other species who had watched humanity's impossible stand and found the courage they had lost long ago. The tide was about to turn. The Valori ships were old. Their hulls bore the marks of centuries, and their technology was outdated by Council standards. But they were not alone. Behind them came the Thessari, a reptilian species known for their fierce warriors. Behind them came the Moktur, gentle giants who had been used as labor slaves for generations. Behind them came the Bravani, the Korath, the silent ones of Vega Prime. One by one, the oppressed species of the galaxy arrived at humanity's side. It was not a large force, perhaps 200 ships in total, facing a Council fleet that still numbered over 40,000. By any logical measure, it changed nothing. But logic had stopped mattering hours ago. Elder Serathvin stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the battle before him. For 3,000 years he had lived as a servant. He had watched his people bow and scrape before Council masters. He had told himself that survival was enough, that pride was a luxury they could not afford. He had been wrong. Open a channel to the human commander, he said. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted. Blood stained her uniform from a wound she had not bothered to treat. But her eyes were bright with something that Sarathvin recognized. It was the look of someone who had found something worth dying for. "You came," she said simply. "We watched you fight," Sarathvin replied. "We watched you refuse to surrender when surrender was the only sensible choice. We watched your pilot fly into the Praetor's ship with his eyes open, knowing he would die. And we asked ourselves, if these young ones can find such courage, what excuse do we have for cowardice?" Admiral Chen smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Welcome to the fight, Elder. We could use the help." The arrival of the Allied fleet sent shockwaves through the Council forces. The new Praetor, a young commander named Thexvora, struggled to understand what was happening. Rebellion was not supposed to be possible. Species who defied the Council were destroyed. This was the natural order. This was how things had always been. But the natural order was crumbling before his eyes. On dozens of worlds across the galaxy, other rebellions were beginning. News of humanity's stand had spread through underground networks and whispered conversations. Slaves who had never questioned their chains suddenly found themselves asking dangerous questions. What if the Council could be defeated? What if freedom was possible? On the factory world of Kreth, workers sabotaged the machines that built Council weapons. On the agricultural planet of Vorn, farmers refused to harvest crops destined for Council bellies. On station after station, garrison after garrison, small acts of resistance became a flood. The Council was not just fighting one species anymore. They were fighting an idea. Admiral Chen reorganized her forces to work with the Allied fleet. The Velori brought knowledge of Council tactics accumulated over millennia. The Thessari brought fearless warriors who fought with savage joy. The Moktar brought engineering skills that could repair damaged ships in hours instead of days. And humans brought something else. They brought creativity. They brought stubbornness. They brought the absolute refusal to accept defeat. The battle shifted. What had been a desperate last stand became a genuine fight. Council ships fell in numbers they had never experienced. The Allies pressed forward, driving the enemy back toward the outer system. But the Council was not finished. Praetor Thexvora knew that he could not let the rebellion spread further. He had to end this battle decisively. He had to show the galaxy that resistance was futile. He called for reinforcements, and the Council's greatest weapon arrived. The Devastator was the largest warship ever built. It was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. In 10,000 years of warfare, it had never been defeated. It had never even been challenged. The massive ship emerged from hyperspace like a mountain floating in the void. Its guns were already charged. Its target was Titan, Saturn's largest moon, where humanity had built their final military installation. "All ships focus fire on that vessel," Admiral Chen ordered. But it was useless. Weapons that had destroyed Council cruisers bounced harmlessly off the Devastator's shields. The great ship advanced without slowing, shrugging off attacks like a giant ignoring mosquitoes. On Titan, 10,000 soldiers watched the Devastator approach. They knew what was coming. They had minutes to live. Admiral Chen's hands trembled. She had sent so many to their deaths. Now she was about to lose the last of Earth's defenders. The Devastator would turn Titan to rubble, then proceed to Earth. The rebellion would be crushed. Everything they had fought for would be lost. Then her communication panel flickered. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's face appeared. "Admiral," Yuki said, "I have something. I modified the disruption device. If we can deliver it inside the Devastator's shield perimeter, it will overload their entire power system. The ship will tear itself apart." Chen leaned forward. "How do we get it through their shields?" A single ship, moving fast enough, could punch through for a fraction of a second, long enough to release the device. Yuki paused. "But the ship would not survive the shield impact. It is a one-way trip." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what Yuki was saying. Someone would have to fly a suicide mission against the most powerful warship in the galaxy. Before Chen could speak, a new voice came through the communicator. "I will do it." Commander Zara Okonkwo was 32 years old. She was a pilot, a soldier, and the daughter of Secretary General Amara Okonkwo. She had fought in the battle from the beginning, destroying 7 Council ships with skill and daring. Her fighter was damaged, but it could still fly. "Zara, no," Admiral Chen said. "Your mother, My mother taught me that freedom is worth dying for, Zara replied. Her voice was calm, steady. She taught me that some things are more important than any single life. If I do not do this, everyone on Titan dies. Everyone on Earth dies. Everything we have fought for dies. She paused. Let me do this, Admiral. Let me save our people. Admiral Chen closed her eyes. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to find another way, but she knew there was no other way. Time had run out. Godspeed, Commander, she said softly. Zara loaded the device onto her fighter. She said a silent goodbye to her mother, knowing that somehow Amara would understand. Then she flew toward the Devastator. The great ship's guns turned to track her. Laser fire filled the space around her. Zara flew like she had never flown before, pushing her damaged fighter beyond its limits. She dodged and spun through the storm of weapons, driven by something beyond skill or training. She was driven by love. Love for her people, love for her world. Love for every being in the galaxy who dreamed of freedom. The Devastator's shields loomed before her. They were not solid, but energy barriers that could vaporize anything that touched them. Zara did not slow down. She did not hesitate. She hit the shields at full speed. The impact should have destroyed her instantly. Instead, for one miraculous moment, her ship punched through. The energy tore her fighter apart around her, but she had already released the device. The last thing Commander Zara Okonkwo saw was the light of the overload beginning inside the Devastator. Then everything went white. The explosion was visible from Earth. The greatest warship in the galaxy tore itself apart from the inside. Its own power turned against it. Debris spread across millions of miles of space. Praetor Thexvora, along with 30,000 Council soldiers, died in an instant. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then slowly, the Council fleet began to retreat. They had come to crush a rebellion. They had lost their praetor, their flagship, and their belief that they could not be beaten. Their fleet was in disorder. Their enemies were multiplying. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Council was afraid. On Earth, people who had been preparing for death suddenly realized they might live. They wept and embraced and looked up at the stars with wonder. On the Allied ships, warriors of a dozen species cheered together. They had won. Against all odds, against all logic, they had won. But Admiral Chen did not celebrate. She stood at her window looking at the stars where Zara had died. "Thank you," she whispered. "We will not waste your gift." The battle was over. The war was just beginning. The Council fleet limped away from Seoul, leaving behind the wreckage of their pride. They had come with 50,000 ships. They left with less than 30,000, and those that remained were damaged in body and spirit. For the first time in living memory, the masters of the galaxy had been humbled. News of the victory spread faster than light itself. On every world under Council control, beings whispered the story to each other in secret. The humans had won. The impossible had happened. The tyrants could bleed. On Earth, the celebrations were mixed with mourning. Over 4 million people had died in the battle. Cities were scarred. Colonies were destroyed. The cost of freedom had been terrible. But the survivors looked at each other with new eyes. They had faced extinction and chosen to fight. They had stared into the darkness and refused to be afraid. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo addressed the world from the ruins of the Geneva Assembly Hall. The building had been damaged by Council bombardment, but she had refused to speak from anywhere else. The broken walls and scattered rubble were a reminder of what they had survived. "We have won a battle," she said. "Not the war. The Council still controls most of the galaxy. They have resources and armies beyond counting. They will not forgive what we have done. They will return." She paused and looked at the cameras, knowing that billions of beings across multiple worlds were watching. "But we are no longer alone. Today I am honored to announce the formation of the Free Worlds Alliance. Humanity and our allies, the Vailori, the Thessari, the Moktur, and all those who stood with us, have joined together in common cause. We will defend each other. We will fight for each other. We will build a future where no species is forced to kneel before tyrants." The crowd that had gathered in the ruins erupted in cheers, but Amara raised her hand for silence. "Some have asked me why we fought. Why did we not simply accept the Council's terms and survive? Why did we risk everything for something as abstract as freedom? Her voice grew soft, but it carried clearly through the broken hall. I will tell you why. Because survival without dignity is not truly living. Because a chain, no matter how comfortable, is still a chain. Because our children deserve to grow up believing that they are the masters of their own fate. We did not fight to rule anyone. We did not fight for power or glory. We fought because every thinking being in this universe has the right to be free, and that right is worth any price. In the months that followed, the Free Worlds Alliance grew. Species that had secretly resented council rule for generations found the courage to join. Some contributed ships, some contributed resources, some simply offered their labor and their loyalty. The council, for their part, prepared for revenge. They gathered their fleets, built new weapons, and planned campaigns of brutal retaliation. The rebellion had humiliated them. It had to be crushed completely, or their entire system of control would collapse. But the dynamics of the galaxy had shifted. The council had ruled through fear. That fear was broken. Every day, more beings looked at their masters and asked themselves the question that humans had asked: what if we said no? On Vailor Prime, Elder Serathvin walked through the streets of his capital city. For the first time in 3,000 years, Valori were standing tall. Children played games pretending to be human pilots. Artists painted murals celebrating the Battle of Seoul. Teachers told stories of Commander Zara Okonkwo's sacrifice. A young Valori approached the elder. She was barely a century old, full of the energy that Serathvin had forgotten existed in his people. "Elder," she said, "why did you wait so long? Why did we not fight the council centuries ago?" Serathvin considered the question. It was one he had asked himself many times. "We told ourselves that resistance was impossible," he said finally. "We convinced ourselves that survival was enough. We lived in fear so long that we forgot what it felt like to hope." He looked at the young one, with something like wonder in his ancient eyes. Then the humans came, young, foolish, completely ignorant of how powerful the council was. They saw the same impossible odds we saw, but they reached a different conclusion. What conclusion? They decided that some things are worth fighting for, even if you cannot win. They decided that dying on your feet is better than living on your knees. They reminded us of something we had forgotten. He smiled. They reminded us who we used to be. Secretary General Okonkwo received visitors from across the Alliance. Representatives of species she had never imagined came to Earth to pay their respects and discuss the future. But one visitor meant more to her than all the others. Elder Serathvin arrived on a cool autumn day. The ancient Valori walked slowly through the streets of New Geneva, looking at the humans going about their daily lives. He saw parents walking with children. He saw workers rebuilding damaged buildings. He saw soldiers training for the battles to come. Everywhere he looked, he saw a species that had refused to give up. He met Amara in a garden overlooking the city. She looked tired. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on her shoulders, and he knew that she carried another burden that no one could share. Her daughter had died saving them all. "You have lost much," Serathvin said. "We have all lost much," Amara replied. "But my daughter did not die for nothing. She died for a future where our children can live free. I will not dishonor her sacrifice by giving up now." Serathvin nodded slowly. Then, to Amara's surprise, he bowed. It was a deep bow, the kind his people reserved for only the most revered figures in history. He had not bowed to anyone in 3,000 years. "We always believed that liberation would come from the eldest and wisest among us," he said, "the species who had accumulated the most knowledge, the most power. We were wrong. It came from the youngest, the most stubborn, the ones too foolish to know that resistance was impossible." He straightened and looked at her with his four ancient eyes. "You have given the galaxy something it has not had for 10,000 years. You have given us hope. We will follow you, Secretary General, not because you are the strongest or the wisest, but because you showed us that courage matters more than strength, that the size of the fight in the being matters more than the size of the being in the fight." Amara reached out and took his hand. It was a strange gesture between two species so different, but in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. "We did not do this alone," she said, "and we will not finish it alone. This is not humanity's war anymore. It is everyone's war, the war for the soul of the galaxy. Across the stars, the drums of war were beating. The Council was gathering their forces. The greatest conflict the galaxy had ever known was approaching. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more losses. The road ahead was long and dark, but for the first time in 10,000 years, there was light at the end of that road. On Earth, a memorial was built for those who had fallen in the Battle of Sol. At its center stood a statue of Commander Zara Okonkwo, her hand raised toward the stars. Below her image were carved the words that had defined humanity's stand: "We will never surrender." Children came to the memorial to learn about the heroes who had saved them. Veterans came to remember their fallen friends. Visitors from other worlds came to see the place where the rebellion had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, young species who had just discovered the stars looked toward Earth and knew that they were not alone. The tyrants were not invincible. Freedom was possible. All it took was the courage to stand up and say no. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had fought for.